Welcome to another segment of In Depth and Out Loud. For you as a student, it's about making it practical in terms of understanding what it is that you're learning and ultimately how it fits in the world of work. Well, my guest today has done some incredible work in the corporate space, having applied her trade in big companies like Old Mutual and Alexander Forbes to eventually do her own thing, founding an agency called 888. They are purpose-led. Let's welcome Sarika Modi, who is, of course, the Chief Executive Officer. Welcome.
Hi, Mo. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolute pleasure for you to be here today. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is a mixture of your experience in the corporate world and also your experience doing your own thing and running your own purpose-led agency. Let's talk about what it is to be a purpose-led brand, organization, business. What is that?
I think it's probably a terminology that everyone's hearing about so much, and people must be curious about how this differs from what companies normally do. I think it's really important as a space that the world is moving into very rapidly. A brand purpose really relates to the essence of a brand and what it stands for. It's your reason for being, the reason for your brand or your organization existing, and very importantly is that it has to go beyond profit. So it's really about defining the essence of a company in a way that showcases how it has a positive impact on people and on the planet.
And why is that important? Because you talk about profits. We've heard very often people say the purpose of a business is to make money and stay in business. So why is it important to have more than just that as an objective?
So I want to say first and foremost that profit is still important. And even amongst purpose-led brands, operating within companies, by nature, profitability in itself is also socially responsible because it creates jobs. And people need employment and income, which betters their lives. But purpose is really about the fact that brands also are citizens of the world, and how are they having a positive impact as citizens in a way that doesn't prioritize profit over everything else. So, as a really good example, when we talk about the triple bottom line, it's about having a positive impact on people, the planet, and also on profit, but not profit in a way that could be harmful to the people and the planet.
Is it something that is, constructed by an organization, from within? Is it about the environment? Like, how do you know what purpose to reach out to be connected with as an organization?
That's a question that I think a lot of people have, both related to companies and even personally. But in relation to companies, we look at it in a three-part approach, which is what is the unmet need in the world that your brand can be applied to. But also very important is the authenticity of your brand and what are you passionate about and what do you really stand for authentically. And then how do you apply it in a way that actually resonates with your customers and with your stakeholders, because they're really important too. You could have a brand with a specific passion and it goes after a certain unmet need, but if it doesn't resonate with its customers, how does that fit in well with the purpose? It actually has to work across all three. So stakeholder, what you authentically stand for, and the unmet need in society.
From a brand point of view, does having a purpose almost make you more liked or loved by, say, for example, your consumer, if you're making it part of an overall marketing strategy?
100%, it does. In fact, there are many reasons for why a brand should have purpose. I think one of the key reasons is that our young Gen Z and young millennial audiences are so conscious of this world that they have come into, and many of the problems that we have, from climate change to inequality, that they're looking for how are brands creating an impact on that beyond just selling me a service or a product. It's also creating competitive edge between brands, and I think quite important is differentiation. So brands are also using purpose as a way to really differentiate themselves and stand out from competitors. And Mo, I've got a really good example of it. And it's a brand that, we've been working with for many years and just won 15 awards for in the last 2 years, actually based on their purpose. And that is Cadbury.
Wow.
The most loved chocolate brand in South Africa that I think every student would have grown up with.
Sure.
And what the brand did is that they did a Kantar study of how consumers perceive them to be different from their competitors 3 years ago. We then initiated this brand purpose and started executing it, within the market, centered around generosity. So Cadbury realized that their meaningful purpose was around making the world more generous. We know that the world has become more selfish over time. We're kind of less community-driven and more, self-centered.
Me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they sought their purpose to make the world more generous. And we've executed a number of incredible campaigns with them over the last 3 years. And the recent Kantar study showed that their brand difference increased radically. Wow. And that is how they used purpose as a way to differentiate themselves in a pretty much a sea of sameness amongst, confectionery or chocolate brands.
Sure.
I think a very important one is reputation management. And it really comes down to trust. Sometimes things go wrong, with brands. An advert doesn't pan out the way, somebody thought it would, and there are controversies that can arise. And gosh, we've got some incredible examples of that. I mean, Unilever, as a good example, has got 2 brands in its stable. It's got Dove, that you all know really well, and it's also got TRESemmé. And both are beauty, cosmetic brands. Dove is the one with purpose. TRESemmé is the one that hasn't really had purpose infused in it. But when you look at Dove as a brand and how it's managed its reputation, it is phenomenal. People are more forgiving towards the brand because they trust it, because they see that it's constantly doing good in the world.
Right.
Whereas a brand like TRESemmé, I think you would have seen during COVID, there was quite a big controversy over one of their ads that went out.
Sure.
And the brand actually couldn't manage its reputation as well as Dove did. And that's just within the Unilever stable. Another really important reason is stakeholder engagement, and especially employee engagement. People coming into the workplace are saying, what does the company that I work for stand for?
Sure.
How are they positively contributing into society? And I think we all know that when we go home, we want to proudly tell our families about the amazing things that the company we work for or we have created stand for.
Yeah.
And not just that, yes, we made a lot of profit, but it was maybe to the detriment of, communities or the planet. So, those are some of the reasons why it's really important for brands to have purpose.
I'm just listening as you talk now, Sarika, and in my mind, I'm already thinking, in South Africa, we sit with so many different challenges, socioeconomically, complex issues, aplenty. So in our context, how then do you apply this concept of being purpose-led as a brand, as an organization, and why is it so important now more than ever in South Africa?
That's a really good question, Mo. And there's a list of problems that we need to tackle in South Africa. And I think that what we can be very, very proud of is that brands that are either global brands or even local brands have really adopted purpose so strongly in the country and are filling spaces where, there's need within communities and even, when it comes to taking care of climate change on the planet. And I think one good example, which might have been a little bit forced by Eskom, but tackling the issue of climate change and sustainability is that the private sector is adopting solar and sustainable energy at such an accelerated rate.
Yeah.
So I think that when we look at a country like South Africa, what's really important, and especially for young people, with you coming into the workplace, is to start reframing problems into opportunities that you could be solving. To actually seek out, to look at what we would typically see as a problem that people could complain about, but to actually reframe it and look at it as an opportunity for how you can make a difference in the world and through the work that you're doing.
Because I'm glad you mentioned young people, because there's a student who's probably watching this and they're doing a course in management and business and marketing. So the idea of being purpose-driven for them has to fit in somewhere. Would you say that looking at the companies that are out there as opportunities for them to work at or in, purpose is something that they need to consider when they're going out there in the market looking for jobs and places to work?
Absolutely, Mo. I think that firstly would be a very impressive question for management.
So in the interview, mention that what is your purpose as a company?
Absolutely, and I think that any interviewer would be very impressed that a candidate has thought about it and is really considering how they fit into an organization.
Sure.
But I also want to suggest that companies haven't. It's a journey. So going on this purpose-led strategy is about a journey. It's about making progress. And not every single organization is, as far as a Unilever or a Cadbury is.
Sure.
So I think that whilst it's important to ask the question, maybe not to be too judgmental about the response, but if you join that organization, actually look at the opportunity of showing them how you can drive purpose within the organization as a way of you actually, adding value to it.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing because there's got to be more to it, hasn't it? There's got to be a meaning. I want to go back to something you alluded to when it comes to authenticity and how, for instance, as a brand, picking which issue to tackle, with meaning and purpose, and how sometimes that can land wrong. I mean, are there challenges in pursuing some of these purposes as an organization to say, well, this is what we want to speak for, this is what we want to stand for, these are the issues that we want to deal with?
Absolutely. So as I said earlier on, I think that the key to getting it right is, firstly, as you said, Mo, is to be authentic. To really consider what are the values of the organization. A lot of the time, if it's a startup, it actually starts with the founder and what they feel passionate about. So if you're looking at finishing your degree and going off and starting your own company, actually look at what are your values, because if it's a subject that you feel passionate about, then you can inspire other people in that. So it has to be really authentic. The second part about it that's really key is looking at where there's an unmet need. And an unmet need can be framed in so many different ways. I mean, we're working with brands that have healthcare as, one of their foundations. So they'll look at, where are there, disease issues, for example, that can be solved. But there are other unmet needs in society. And as I said, looking at emotional needs like values, like generosity, for example. So those are different ways in which unmet needs can become more tangible. And the third, and I think this is really important, is how does it actually connect with your customer, with the consumer, or with the stakeholder that you're working with? And that's absolutely key, because you could get the first two parts right, but actually lose your customer base. And there are many examples of brands that have alienated a large part of their customer base because they kind of took a route that didn't resonate with them or didn't connect with them, or and this is where it's a real catch-22, because sometimes it's also about leading the world in a way that's going to challenge current ways of thinking that we possibly believe might be the right way.
Sure.
Gender equality issues, for example, sometimes they do rub some consumers up the wrong way.
Sure,
let's be honest.
Sure.
Gillette did that with some of their adverts, but are they truly authentic in that? Are they willing to stay the course? Because if you choose the path and you U-turn later, there are other challenges that it can raise for you also. So it's very exciting. It's very interesting. There are lots of interesting things that are happening with brands as they're playing in this new area. But I think that those are the three key things that they can get right.
And is there intel that can tell me as a brand or an organization as to which purpose is going to serve us better, possibly connect with our market better instead of alienate them? Or is it kind of like, well, we're just going to feel it out? I mean, how does it work?
It's so interesting, Mo, because you've seen massive global brands literally feeling it out and creating massive talkability, some positive and some negative. And as I said, Gillette was one of them.
Sure.
Ben & Jerry's, for example, people asking, what does an ice cream brand have to do with LGBTQ, for example?
Yes.
So there's all these conversations that are taking place. And, in terms of testing it, absolutely. There are ways to test it. But at the end of the day, it's all about what is your vision? Do you want to be bold? Do you want to make a statement? Do you believe that you have enough to actually shift the world? And the truth be told is that in advertising, I think something that's amazing is that advertising responds to things going on in the world, but it also creates massive shifts in the world. And I think that's the powerfulness behind that medium, is that it can do it. So it's really about, you know, what you want to do with it and what your vision is.
It also sounds like, from an entrepreneurial point of view, it's almost as if purpose is going to be part of the blueprint of your business. So in other words, you come up with your business plan, you come up with a plan, but the purpose part of it also has to be in there. It's almost like that's kind of where you need to be. Would you say that's a correct assessment, based on what I've been listening to with what you're saying, to say even as a small business starting out, don't wait to be a big business. Don't wait to be 10 scales up. Purpose is something you need to have almost from the jump.
I completely agree with you, Mo. And, you know, 888 is one of 50 companies in Africa that was really fortunate to be selected by Stanford University in the US, where they, you know, took us through this 1.5-year long program all around developing brands and, you know, developing companies globally. And it's so interesting, you know, to listen to some of these top experts talking about how to develop these global brands and to scale them. And innately, every single one of them starts from a point of purpose. So how are you defining your company? How are you defining your brand in a way that actually frames it to have a positive impact in society? You know, are you selling a shoe, or are you selling, you know, athleticism and health? Those are some of the issues, you know, that we need to tackle. And I think that if you can get it right from day one, purpose will actually help you grow. It will actually help you scale. So you're really there by the time you've become big.
And, you know, what advice do you have for students who are either going to be stepping into the world as entrepreneurs or walking into companies and organizations that are purpose-led? What would you say are some of the important tools that a student should have when they step into that space?
The world is changing so quickly, and I think that it makes it so exciting for young people that are joining the workplace right now. I think that, you know, areas that young people can contribute to is bringing their thinking and their ideas. Things like, you know, how are we integrating technology with purpose? Because technology itself is actually accelerating purpose and accelerating positive impact in society and on the planet in so many different ways. I think, you know, those are some of the conversations they could have. Interconnectedness. So, you know, companies have started to become much more interconnected in the way that they're looking at their purpose. You know, you could be a brand that is, you know, defined in a specific area. For example, you could be a healthcare brand that is all about hand washing, like a Lifebuoy or Dettol soap, for example, where they're all around hygiene. But what brands are doing now is actually interconnecting with other topics like diversity, inclusion, and equality, and looking at what sort of impact we're having on, you know, people with disabilities and how we're helping them with hand washing. You know, if you're blind and you're in a school, how are you able to get access to all of this education? So those are some of the key things that are happening in the world, and I think it's, you know, incredibly exciting. I think for students coming in, if you're coming into an organization, look at how you can add value in these spaces by questioning and, you know, bringing your ideas. I think for young people, what's really exciting just culturally is that young people want to be a part of the solution. And I think that constantly being a part of that solution is a place that you can play in. It'll also help you personally get seen, and possibly also help you move up in management by being seen as such an active leader and playing that role within an organization.
And just staying with South Africa, Sarika, how are we doing in terms of our brands and companies and organizations in the space of being purpose-led?
Most South African companies are doing phenomenally when it comes to the space of purpose. And just by means of example, we've worked with over 100 brands that are operating in South Africa, whether they're global brands or local brands. And a couple of years ago, we actually entered that work for a very big award, which is the UK Purpose Awards.
Wow.
It's a global award that looks at, purpose that's taking place around the world. We actually won the Agency of the Year at the Purpose Awards.
That is brilliant. Congratulations.
Thank you. And it was incredibly heartwarming because the judges actually wrote to us to say that they were so blown away that a country like South Africa was so forward-thinking and just so much further ahead compared to all the other countries and the companies and agencies that they had seen. And I think that, yes, we are a country that has a lot of inequality. We have a myriad of problems. But what I think is really heartwarming is how the public sector have really stepped up to helping solve a lot of those problems. And some examples that really touch my heart is in the healthcare space. We work with an incredible number of brands in healthcare. We work very closely with the Department of Health in South Africa. We've got strong relationships with them. And in working together with the public sector and the private sector, we understand where the gaps are and where the community needs are. And when you see how South African brands are stepping up to go into these spaces and fill the needs, it's incredible. And, one such brand that I really have to mention is Huggies. For people who are moms or parents, when you go to a private hospital, you have such a different experience to what you have in the public hospitals because, there's just so many people that the doctors and nurses have to deal with. So pregnant moms, for example, don't get antenatal classes in public hospitals. A brand like Huggies identified this as a gap. They saw it as something that was essential to how, moms take care of themselves and their babies. And so they actually started providing health workers, funding health workers, educating them, partnering with the Department of Health to put them into these spaces. They then recognized that, a private sector mom going into a private hospital would get this beautiful hospital bag welcoming her, as she was about to go and give birth to her baby. So Huggies said, let's go and fill that space. And they brought partners on board to try to fill that gap. So it's about 500,000 moms a year that they're actually reaching to try to bridge this gap between public and private hospitals, and they're doing an amazing job of it. We've seen brands like Dettol, for example, during the pandemic, helping government and saying, hang on, people are not coming forward to hospitals and clinics for things like chronic medication or to take care of their heart disease because they're scared of getting COVID. Brands like Dettol actually stood up and went, we'll give you guys 1 million bars of soaps, we'll put hand washing stations all over the country, and those are the things that they've done. So there are so many examples of what South African businesses are doing that I think is just incredibly heartwarming and really needs to be celebrated. I think that sometimes as South Africans, we tend to be negative about these things, but when you look at the world, they're actually celebrating some of our successes and the attitude and approach that our corporates actually have, and I think that's worth celebrating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose this conversation is also about, giving a sense of inspiration, even with your agency as 888 to many young people who are looking to get into the space and looking to do something really meaningful out there when they're in the working world.
Mo, it's really important, for young people to, yes, we're talking about purpose-led brands, but actually ask yourself, what's your purpose? As you're leaving university and you're crafting out your own vision for what you want to do in the world, make sure that it's a strong vision. I actually love vision boarding. I create a vision every single year. I put it up on the board, and every single year by December, I can literally tick off 90% of what's on it. Wow. So actually think of yourself as a brand. Think of your own purpose, what it is you want to achieve, and authentically go out into the world and actually do it. And I think that you will find that, companies and communities and people at large will start backing you. That is actually the power of having a purpose. It's the power of having a vision. And I think that as long as you have in your heart that you want to make a difference in the world, people will feel that energy, they will know it, and they will support you. And all of these things will ladder up to your success.
Sarika, you've said a lot of incredible things that I know are going to land well. As we wrap this conversation, what would you like to leave with anybody that's watching this right now?
I think just that driving your sense of purpose or, purpose-led brand really requires dedication. perseverance and passion, but the potential to create meaningful change and to make a massive mark on the world is incredibly rewarding. And I wish you all the best with that.
And I wish you all the best with 888 Agency, with everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you so much, Mo.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you. And there you go, Sarika Modi, the Chief Executive Officer of 888 Agency, talking about purpose and ultimately, what is your purpose? Yes, that's what it's about, in depth and out loud, and you know, giving you something to think about while you are going through your studies and your academic journey.